Okay, I'm here today with a very special guest, Elana Freeland. Hi there, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me all the way to Ecuador. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. And you're the author of a few books, Chemtrails, HARP, and The Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, Under an Ionized Sky, as well as a fictional series, Sub Rosa America. And you're working on a third book on digital synthetic biology, which I want to ask you about. And you've been at some of the major scenes in the 20th century, and I see you as someone who really cares about history and the way society is going. Today, we're going to be talking about nanobiological robots, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, atmospheric heaters, synthetic biology, plasma skies, brain-computer interface, rings around the Earth, and space fence lockdown. First, I want to ask you, what is synthetic digital biology?
Well, biology now is going from molecular to digital. And that's an interesting journey. That's straight from the horse's mouth of the synthetic biology, etc. And I think we saw a scene from it when we saw the beginnings of what happened in Wuhan months ago. We
Mm-hmm.
watched it happen on the news, on clips of people dropping. And I do believe that that was from a digital biological assault.
And this has to do with things that we're not really allowed to talk about on YouTube, but we could kind of talk around the subject, like when they have the frequency for the flu and they bombard you with that.
Right. I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into it. Let me give you the title of the book. I don't know it by heart, so I'll have to read it to you. The title of the third book is Geoengineered Transhumanism: How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetics, and Nanoparticles for Synthetic Biology.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm famous for my long titles because I'm writing about something that is so cutting edge that you would be hard pressed to go and find anything written on it. It's sort of being spawned right now in front of our eyes, but we don't know quite what we're looking at. And that's what the first two books were about, was how the chemical trails, i.e. geoengineering, is connected to not just weather. And I would be so bold as to say that there is no natural weather now other than what arises in the South Pacific Ocean and then is immediately taken up by the US Navy and Merchant Marines and possibly Air Force. So weather is very important. And this new technology, which is based on nanotechnology, is actually much larger than just the weather. Though the weather is crucial to keeping the atmosphere ionized. That's the word I used in the second book.
Explain about that. How's the
Right.
ionized?
When HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, began back in the late 90s, up in Gakona, Alaska, it was an ionospheric heater composed of all phased array antennas, and that's acres of them. And the great thing about the phased array antennas for power, steering, and targeting is that you, instead of everything going in a circle the way radio waves normally do in our towers that we're so familiar with, in that case, and the reason I'm stressing this is because the 5G antennas are phased array antennas, just tinier than HARP up in Alaska. But then you can take all those different smaller arrays, and you can cause them all to steer in a certain direction, and you can send a lot of power that way because you've got lots of antennas. So that's what HAARP did. And the main point of HAARP was to go up to the ionosphere and make it give the US Navy, US Air Force, CIA, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, to give them more power in the sense of ions. And what an ion is it's an electron that's been popped off of the atom and powered into electricity.
Mhm.
And so that's basically what HAARP did for us, is it actually turned our atmosphere into a mini ionosphere. And that's because there were so many operations that the military industrial intelligence complex wanted to run in our atmosphere.
You
They're doing a
mentioned
lot of experiments.
that there's a ring around the equator now, an artificial ring, like similar to Saturn. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, yes. And that is purposeful. And I don't know if it was the same with Saturn. I am one of those people that believes that Saturn at one time had some sort of a civilization. It also was not at the outermost ring of our solar system. It was closer in.
Mhm.
And our ring is due to the fact that we're sending up jets, drones, and lots of sounding rockets. Some of them putting satellites up in orbit, some of them going up to test different atmospheric things. They all spew out lots and lots. I mean, we're talking trillions of nanoparticles, and a nano is 1/1000th of a meter. The nanoparticles of metals, and these are conductive metals. We all, well, not all, but a lot of us have heard of how the jets are spewing aluminum, barium, strontium, chromium, lithium, etc.
And so these collect around the Earth and form a ring?
What they do is they spew them into the upper atmosphere, whether it's a jet or a rocket, it's still the stratosphere. And then those particles, all of them start to turn with the Earth to a degree, but then they begin to settle. And they will settle primarily around the equator.
Ouch. Because I'm in Ecuador, so ouch.
That's right.
I came to Ecuador because I wanted to have blue skies and natural weather, but maybe nobody escaped. And you said that this is how they're going to connect humans to artificial intelligence, is because we have these nanoparticles inside of us, and so they can then bombard us with the frequencies.
Well, the ones that don't end up in that ring around the equator, which, by the way, can be very useful for communications in the solar system.
Can you see it by satellite?
Say it again?
Can you see the ring by satellite?
I don't know how much you can see. I know there's a small film that you can watch that explains that it's all ULFs, ultra low frequency particulates around the Earth now, but it's primarily to be used for communications. But what is communications? It's what you're just beginning to talk about. The communications includes surveillance. It includes targeting of human beings. And a lot of those nanoparticles that didn't end up in the ring then continue with gravity to fall down, down, down into our troposphere. And this is where we breathe them. And it falls onto the Earth as well. We've got some in our lungs, and from our lungs it goes to the bloodstream, then it goes into the tissues, and it goes eventually through the blood-brain barrier into our brains. These nanos are on the level of trillions because they're so tiny. And then the others also fall into the Earth, into the tree bark, the leaves of the trees. So a lot of people have noticed trees are dying. A lot of that aluminum is in the soil, and it is wrecking our food healthy food growing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this
Starting
was,
fires.
and for starting fires and running fires, all of this was done without any congressional anything, because in America, we are run by big corporations, as Eisenhower tried to tell us,
Right.
on his way out of office. And so we are basically run, in my opinion, by the Lockheed Martins and the Raytheons of the Western economy.
How are the LSD lights spying on us? How are the LSD lights used for surveillance?
You mean the LED?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I was going to say, last I checked, I didn't know LSD had lights.
Freudian slip. Maybe I'm
Well,
thinking.
let's go back to your other question. We haven't answered it yet, so save that one. The one about how we're breathing in all these nanoparticles and what can they do to us with the nanoparticles. Now you're getting into my list of 7 geoengineering operations.
Yeah, and we want to hear it. I want to ask you about the Kardashev scale and the 7 phases of
Right. Okay.
geoengineering.
Let's start that so we can get it in there. Now, what you're referring to regarding let me get it out so I do it right. Kardashev, Nikolai Kardashev, a Soviet astronomer. Can you still see me because I've got something in front of half your face on my side?
I can see you.
You can see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. In the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev
We're starting to break up a little bit.
said that civilists would have to do 3 things. And the first thing is it would have to achieve full spectrum dominance over its planet. Okay, so that's the Earth, full spectrum dominance. And I used that in the title of my first book. What that means is just think of it as full spectrum dominance regarding the electromagnetic spectrum. That goes all the way from gamma rays to radio waves and microwaves, etc. And if you recall, it's a wide span, but our ability to see in that spectrum is very tiny. We are bound to these wonderful bodies that we have and to our senses. So we can't see a lot of it, but now we have a lot of instruments that can see in those levels. So you can see that the power quotient has changed amazingly in just the last 100 years. So Kardashev said that that's the first thing. You've got to have full spectrum dominance over your own planet. The second thing, you've got to have full spectrum dominance over your star. That would be our sun. And the third is you would have to have full spectrum dominance over your galaxy. Now, where are we today in the secret space program that Catherine Austin Fitts talks about, and actually has said that the more than $21 trillion missing from the American budget, it's actually around 66 trillion now, has gone into the secret space program. So thinking of the canopy of what's going on today, which most people don't think in these terms, of this giant umbrella program called the secret space program, or whatever they call it. We don't know. It's a national security issue. But under that, geoengineering is doing its job, and it serves the secret space program. So we always think of geoengineering as just being about weather, but it isn't just about weather. It's about chemical electromagnetic operations. It's about planetary geophysical operations. It's about directed energy weapons operations. It's about surveillance and neural weapons operations. It's about digital biology, nanotechnology, and transhumanism. And finally, it's about cloaking and obscuration and detection of exotic propulsion craft.
That means making craft invisible, right?
Invisible, or with extraordinary technology that we are unaware of, such as the ability to go Mach 25, which is 740, I believe, times
Could
25.
could this account for some of the UFO sightings that people have?
Absolutely. We definitely have that technology. There's no question about it. The Nazis, when we brought them over under Operation Paperclip, they came with all of their experiments they had achieved and pushed it further in the United States. But there's another thing that is cloaking, obscuration, and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms.
Talk to us about that. Talk to us about that.
That one's important because I rarely talk about it because there's so much else to lay out. But plasma life forms, that would be Trevor James Constable wrote a book called The Cosmic Pulse of Life a long time ago. And he, in the 50s, after Wilhelm Reich had been basically murdered and his research stolen or destroyed, both of those gentlemen had done experiments in the American desert, the Mojave Desert and other deserts, with the infrared film in their cameras, and had discovered that there are all sorts of entities that are in our environment, in our atmosphere, but you can't see them with your eyes. You could see them with infrared and probably other technologies. And so they took photos, black and white at that time, black and white photos of these entities.
Could these be demons or aliens?
Well, no, these actually, when I first saw these, and it's in his book, Cosmic Pulse of Life, there's about, I don't know, 30 pages of photos. What you see are black and white photos of what you might see, or what I used to see. Biology was my second major in undergrad. What I used to see when I'd go under my microscope, microbes. They look like microbes, but not tiny. They're huge. They're big blobby looking things. And some of them have little eyes, and they seem very aware. I used to email with Trevor Constable before he died. And, you know, when I would ask him questions about it, and it appeared that they were made out of plasma, their bodies.
Made? Who made them?
Well, no, okay, so plasma is now thought of or defined in science books as the fourth state of matter. I don't think it's really the fourth state of matter. What plasma is a gaseous, flame-like matter. And it is matter, but it's much finer than our physical bodies, right? So what plasma really is, I think, is the first state of matter. And I've been very affected by a movement called the electric universe, which is far superior to the Big Bang and black holes and all of these terms made up in order to take the place of other terms of the present science, so-called science. And the plasma is formed by an electromagnetic event in the solar system somewhere, or outside the solar system in some other system, when there is an electromagnetic event that then transforms the ether of the universe. And the ether is what Wilhelm Reich called orgone. But really, ether was a term used by scientists in the West for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it was suddenly banned back in the 1920s in America. Mm-hmm. So that Einstein himself used to use the term ether as a term for what is now referred to as dark matter. And why did they ban the term ether? Well, I don't exactly know, but I think they were, again, because most of America is run by brotherhoods, secret societies, as John Kennedy tried to warn us before he was killed.
And that's where you get the phrase sub rosa America that you use in your novels.
In my Sub Rosa America series, I'm looking at the deep underbelly of what really has run America into the ground. And that would be what we call now the deep state. But the deep state is much more than just charades on a political level and an economic level. It's much deeper than that.
And how are they using plasma to control us and to do geoengineering?
Well, the plasma that I'm talking about, where you see these microbe-looking entities in the atmosphere with your infrared film in your camera, or you have maybe some sort of night vision glasses that are infrared. They're very expensive. I'd love a pair, where you can see there are entities. I mean, anyone who has a pair of those spectacles is very fortunate, because then they can see how things really stand in our so-called vacuum of space and the vacuous looking air. So they took pictures of these entities, and the bodies that they have, yeah, there probably was an electromagnetic event, but not like I just described happening in deep space, where you create matter out of ether and electromagnetism. Those are the two ingredients. You've got to have the ether, which is not really matter. But it's substantial in its own way. And then the electromagnetic zap, which I guess is why they came up with the Big Bang preposterous theory, something electric. And then now you have plasma. And the plasma then has to then take shape in some form of some body, like your body is different from an anemone, you know, that you would find on the beach. So all of this is, we're not being taught the plasma yet in schools, which is weird to me, because plasma physics is the rage now among astrophysicists, and certainly at NASA and NOAA. But a lot is kept from us, as you know, by these brotherhoods, who then use knowledge for power. Because I always say, and I write it in books when I sign books for people who buy them, knowledge is power. Scientia est potentia. And the brotherhoods certainly know this, and that's why we're kept on a leash as far as we can learn. Our universities are not at all like their universities, for example.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, a minute ago, you were talking about the Kardashev scale and harnessing the power of the star, which is our sun. We hear a lot of talk about global warming, but if the sun is plasma and they're planning to administer the weather, maybe even tapping into the energy of the sun, this is a very, very dangerous experiment, is it not? Which would mean that
they're doing dangerous experiments all the time. I mean, the attitude toward science, big money science, that is going on now is completely irresponsible, and not taking into account life on the planet, for example, like the nanotechnology that we're inhaling and ingesting in GMO foods. And being vaccinated with. None of this is about our health and our well-being. We are guinea pigs, and they will push it to the limit as far as they need to in order to see what happens on the side of life and the side of illness and the side of death. That's just how they are. Could
climate change and global warming be a psychological operations cover story to cover up for the fact that they are controlling the weather and puncturing holes in the ionosphere. And destroying the jet
and the
stream?
magnetosphere. The magnetosphere has collapsed twice in the last several years. Completely collapsed.
What is the magnetosphere?
Well, that's outside of our, that goes up 22,000 kilometers up outside of our ionosphere.
So what's the solution? What can activists do to get this into the public consciousness?
Well, what I'm doing. I mean, so few people now can concentrate or read. Do you know that? I mean, in a way, I'm probably laughed at that I actually am writing books. I've even had cohorts in the geoengineering, anti-geoengineering movement say to me, Elana, why are you wasting your time writing books? You should be doing videos. Yeah, I suppose I should be doing videos, which of course appeal then to the right brain, so that people who have no sense of concentration anymore and can't retain anything very long at all, can't really push something to its fruition, will be able to watch a film, get a little bit out of it and move on. But to me, I'm writing these books as an effort to leave something for the people who are coming 25, 50 years down the road and wonder what the heck happened back now when no one was writing about these things. You know that there's writing on this, you know there is, but the public has no access to it, none, because it's national security.
Right.
So we have to first attract the attention of people in order to say, hey, not just look up, which is what we used to say when we were talking about just chemtrails, just to see that, oh, that's not a contrail, that's not a condensation trail, that's a chemical trail, because it's lasting for a half hour, 45 minutes as it makes a cloud cover. And it's not cirrus cloud cover, that's plasma. Our whole sky is loaded with plasma now. There are no natural clouds that I've seen for years. So that's what I'm trying to do, is attract attention to how the environment is being used, has been weaponized to use for experimentation. And we are the primary guinea pigs, we and all of life, all of nature. The one science that epigenetics is a new science. And if you read about what epigenetics is, you'll see that this is all about epigenetics. This is using the environment to force biological changes, genetic changes in certainly the human being. So this is why I'm doing it. There is nothing immediate you can do. Write a letter to NASA, ask your congressman to do something. I mean, it's like, no, you can't do the typical things that we've all been conditioned to think leads to justice and democracy and everything. No, that won't work because, and I don't even have to spend any time explaining why. You can just see how that goes.
And I want to thank you for your confident activism. I see you as somebody who's been very involved in major events in the 20th century, meeting presidents, and you take the big picture, and as a historian would. Before I let you go, I just want to ask you about the LED light bulbs that are being used for surveillance, and then talk to us about space fence lockdown.
Well, the LEDs are not safe. So this is important to know. I know people who have them in their living room because they're, quote, cheap, unquote. No, they're not really cheap.
Or they're the only thing that's available.
No, you can get the old bulbs now too, but you have to know where to look. And you have to make an effort. No, I wouldn't at all. They're using LEDs in streetlights, and we now know that they are armed with other things along with the LED lights. They blind you. They cause macular
degeneration.
What's the name of it?
Degeneration.
Degeneration of the retina. And you need to stay away from it. The car headlights, when they come toward me, are just a horror. My eyes.
How are they part of the surveillance, though? How are they spying on us?
That's it. They have small cameras with them in the streetlights.
Okay, but
isn't the ones that are on parkways and on freeways?
Right. Sure.
Those are LEDs. And they are set up. They are created to have small cameras in them, and they can also go off. And someone has commented on this in a video I saw. They go off because there's no car, and then as soon as the car approaches, the light starts coming back on. Everybody thinks it's to save energy. No, it's not to save energy. It's capturing your image and your license plate and everything else. So no, there's nothing good I can say about LEDs other than they're incredibly bright, and a good LED flashlight in the very, very dark woods might be a good idea. I don't know. Okay.
What about space fence lockdown? Are we being locked inside our planet? Talk to us about that.
We are now locked down, yes. And people call it the smart grid. So you have Up in space, you have satellites. Yes, we all know there are satellites there. At least some people think there are satellites. Some people think there aren't any satellites and just space platforms, whatever. But above, we've got, these are all armed, and they're loaded with LEDs, by the way. And then down on the Earth, we have all these radar installations. We have cell towers, Gwen towers, all sorts of an infrastructure that is actually working with what is above us, sandwiching us in between, not just the satellites, but remember all those nano bots and nano materials up there, and the one around the equator, et cetera. It's just loaded up there. And we're sandwiched between. And now we have Elon Musk satellites going up, which are zapping us with microwaves all the time. And we don't notice it, except that our health is degenerating. And I would say that American health has never been lower than it is now. I don't know about other nations, but I know about America. So the sandwiching between is the space fence lockdown. And the space fence is run by Lockheed Martin. And it has to do with what's in space, and it has to do with what's on the Earth. And then the in-between. And the model of the space fence lockdown will actually be the smart city. Because in the smart city, there are nanosensors everywhere. There are nanobots everywhere. And everyone is under what I would call a lockstep. Lockstep, lockdown. Lockstep is when you are absolutely mind controlled and you don't even know it.
Yeah, there was even a document, official document from insiders saying that they were going to put us in lockstep, and they have to herd us into smart cities. And is that why California has to burn?
That's one of the big reasons, is to get the poor people off the land, open it up for the rich people to use for their purposes, and make us go into the smart cities.
I want to thank you very much, Elana, for being with us here today. It's been a real pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for what you do.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Okay.
Shortest interview I've ever had, by the way.
I hope this can be one of many.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.